Hello, this is Rad Chicken Foot.
Ride to the chicken foot.
Chicken foot.
I'm Arthur.
No idea what that means, but it was weird, funny. It was funny to him.
I'm Arthur Spooner. This is Judah Buddha. And that's MP3.
Here's a story. Oh, wait. I feel like I'm in the break now.
How you guys doing? Well, we typically only have one viewer, and he's with us. Oh, we got another viewer. We got one more viewer. All right.
I can't.
So this is the Chicken Foot Podcast. Welcome. And Judah, if you can start us off with the meme.
Okay. Okay, so here's the meme. I'm telling you, man, there's nothing worse than being stuffed with candy and hung on a mantle. The piñata's like,
Well, stuff with candy and getting the crap beat out of him by a bunch of.
he's like, you bastard.
Yeah. That's so the reason why, because what we do usually, Jay, when we present a meme is we go through the quadrilateral and why is this funny, right? Because one, the culture is obviously they share the same culture where they're sitting there hanging with stuff. And then the other culture aspect is we all been in situations where somebody who's got it a little bit better is complaining. You know what I mean?
It reminds me of the Brian Regan, like, you know, like one-upmanship, you know?
Oh yeah.
It's like he's got the ultimate one-upmanship.
Well,
I've been on the moon, but for him it's like I get hoisted up and beat to death.
Yeah. I always thought that Superman was the ultimate one-upper. So the Flash can run, I can run just as fast. Oh, the Hulk is really strong? Yeah, I'm strong. I can throw a whole planet. Jesus rose from the dead. Oh, I can rise from the dead too. Like anything somebody else does, he's got to do it too.
Well, didn't Deadpool do the same thing where it's like, you know, we lived in a one-room apartment. Like, you had a one-room apartment? You know? We all share a bed. You had a bed?
Yeah.
It was just a different, more dark side of funny. Oh my gosh, you had it bad. Well, I had it worse. But
Well, I think another thing that makes this work is like the shared experience of being in a bar. I don't know, like I don't know if everybody's been in a bar, but just sitting next to a guy who's down on his luck, a lot of times it does become sort of this, you know, add a little alcohol and it becomes this like woe is me situation.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of that, you feel, I've smelt this before, you know, where somebody's like, oh man, you'll never believe my life. And you're like,
yeah. That's like what they do in movies and in TV shows. Like they're down and out. They always go to the bar to drink to drink their tears.
Sorrows away.
Drink their sorrows away.
I feel like the piñata's silence actually makes this a little more funny.
It's true.
You understand? Like, he could have said something that was really funny and just like, oh yeah. You know, like
he's just absorbing it.
I think it would be just a little funnier if they switched the eyes to where Piñana has the like eyes, like, you know, and he's looking at you like, you don't even know
what are you talking about.
And the other guys are, you know, and the stock is just like, man, that's like the worst thing ever. You don't even know. You don't even understand.
I don't know though, because I like his eyes because he's like, you just hang on a mantle.
He looks surprised. He's like, I wish I had that life. Oh my god!
People can just hang on a man that exists.
But it's swinging from a rope and some stick or something, and I don't know.
Okay, well that's
just under cultural because you know that's part of our quadrilateral cultural.
Yeah.
Not really surprised.
Well, it definitely the surprise, because that's aspect, like a surprise, something you didn't expect, which is that the pinata is not expecting this guy to complain about it when he always feels like he's got it worse, right?
Yeah. That becomes sort of like what they call dramatic irony, where the audience knows something that the character doesn't.
Yeah.
Or know.
And you have the tension too, because the stocking is just complaining and complaining, and not realizing that, you know what,
you want
the guy next to me is kind of way worse, and so
you got it bad.
Build, you know. And I think Judah posted it with the #1 tag on the side to kind of hint like this one's better than the one that Joseph does. But that's
there's a #1 tag. I'm not.
On the side, can you see it all the way
There's
over?
a blue ribbon.
Blue ribbon.
No, Chanda.
Blue ribbon. There it is. Yeah, I see it. I was just, I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. My eyes were going more to the picture.
All right. What else we got today?
All right. Well, today we have a guest, MP3, and we're going to talk to him about comedy. So we're going to talk to him about comedy because that's what the show's about. Is what is funny? Why are things funny? Switching places, like hot potato. All right.
You taking like chairs and stuff? I mean, I don't know.
All right. So Jay, when what was like when you were growing up, what was like the first time that you really began to understand like comedy, or thought somebody was really funny, or what was really funny to you when you first grew up? First thing you could remember noticing.
I'm an old man. I actually grew up with a record player, and one of these old record players with like woven fabric across the speakers, and there was like a little pocket here for all these records, and I would be going through them, and there's these old ones here, and I'd put it in there. And my father had this whole collection of Bill Cosby, and so my first real experience with just sitting and enjoying comedy was Bill Cosby. A lot of storytelling about it.
Yeah.
And so, as you know, that's a lot of like twists in the end, like a funny situation, or maybe a person's funny reaction. I remember all this. I mean, I used to know all the stories, and I would repeat them to people, and people like, "Oh, very familiar." And I'm like, just quoting Bill Cosby. Didn't realize, because it's what kids do. And so I'd go telling the stories like they're my story, but
not all the stories.
Well, let me ask you, because part of when I was a kid, I've seen interviews with Eddie Murphy, and I think Seinfeld did this. Is that they basically would do the same thing you're doing.
My wife's thinking
they would repeat as a kid. They would just basically mimic someone else's.
Oh, how my wife is asking how can she access this Chicken Foot podcast?
Go to Facebook /chickenfootpodcast.com. Facebook.com/chickenfootpodcast.
And we are also streaming live on YouTube as well.
Can I just
YouTube?
They would just basically someone else's.
Oh, my wife is asking.
Turn it down.
Yeah. At first, I was like, "Man, he's good at ventriloquism." It sounds like he's talking without talking.
I was trying to send it there, but I couldn't.
All right. So, but these famous comedians would do basically what you were talking about.
But they would listen to other comedians and repeat them and just...
Yeah, repeat them and begin to learn timing, begin to learn how to establish a joke.
And that's really what we're doing. It's like, I understand, even as a kid, you're asking yourself, why is this funny? I mean, it's obviously funny, but I don't get it. And, you're trying to be liked by your peers and you're young, so you want to say something that's funny and entertain them. And honestly, as a kid, you screw it up. So it doesn't actually work out, and they think you're crazy. And then you do years of therapy and drugs and alcohol when you're older. And
Holy cow, that took a dark turn. So let me ask you. Judah and I have debated several times about, well, not debated, but really discussed at length, how did comedy or laughter or humor develop
Probably
in human history? Like, how did it first come about? What caused it?
I would say by accident.
Okay, like how? Do you think you?
Yeah,
like,
say more.
I would say that, you know, someone would see something happen that was a surprise,
mm-hmm.
and they would laugh, and they were like, "Wait a minute, what was that?" You know, if we're talking like Cro-Magnon Man or something.
Yeah.
And these are things where people would start drawing things on walls, and there was oral traditions, and then they want to convey this happenstance, and they put it on the wall or they spoke it, and then there's, just like we do, we will sometimes tend to embellish stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I'm assuming that back then there was some sort of pecking order, so you wanted to be the dominant guy in the conversation or the dominant guy in the village, and you had to be liked so no one would kill you or take your stuff or your wife or whatever if you had one. And so you just, you know, you found out, oh, if I do this, people react.
Mm-hmm.
But it all started out with seeing something funny, I think, where you observed it and you're like, oh, ha, ha, ha. Oh, wait, what was that? You know,
mm-hmm.
Let's do that again. Fall down again. You know, go poke that brontosaurus again.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because that's part of what Judah, that's how he really thought about it. It came from like this, because you're like hunting and you're always like, you know, kind of afraid for your life, and it's a way to kind of relieve the tension and the anxieties, kind of to release. And so you have that anxiety because, you know, everything around you could pretty much kill you. You know, you have no idea about diseases. You have no idea about infections. I mean, and, you know, animals can kill you. Insects can kill you. You know, your own body can kill you. And you have no idea a majority of things that could kill you. You wouldn't know.
Well, I think even to this day, people use humor to alleviate situations. Like, I was in med school, and we're having this speaker speak. Lovely young lady. She's in these heels, and she's talking, and she's giving this presentation, and she rolls her foot right in the middle of all of it. All flat. And she gets up, and she's like, you know, when you have that dream before you give a speech, and you think about the worst you could possibly have it.
Everybody must have. Oh yeah.
It totally smoothed everything over. She got back up, finished her presentation, and everything was good. But it was to see this woman, and she was not a small petite thing. She was, you know, so it was a big crash, and but I was like, wow, she diffuse that really well. And I think that when you're like what you say, you're constantly running from death and danger and potential embarrassment. Mm-hmm. Something happens, it's a way for you to be able to cope, like a coping mechanism.
Well, one of the things that I one episode we did where we did a little study on it, and one of the things that I found that a lot of scientists think, and I'm starting to come around to like think, you know, this makes sense, is that it's a way to establish relationships. You know, you feel connected with someone. So when you laugh, you feel connected. And that's why when you're in a world where everything's a threat, being a cohesive team you're going to have more likely to survive. Somebody's like, I'm a loner. Well, you know, they're less likely to survive. So when you establish relationships, when you make somebody laugh, you feel closer to them. So you're more attractive to the opposite sex. The same sex, or your co-workers or co-hunters or whatever, they feel a bond with you on another level. So you're making connections, and you feel more necessary to this community.
Yeah, I had heard it's sort of like it's a social I don't know,
catalyst,
where people will, when they tell a joke, And when everyone laughs, or even if they're just laughing at the same joke with other people, they will tend to look at the person they want to impress or connect with. Like everyone laughs at the person they actually are trying to connect with, which is weird. When I read that, I was like, oh, well, God, that's probably true. And now that I hear that, you see it happen when people look at someone.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, they're trying to make a connection, or at least this person is trying to make a connection with that person. But they're always looking at somebody else. You know, it's always that way.
You know, it's funny.
That's why me and Joseph are such friends, because he was always looking at me. I was like,
well, you're hot.
Yeah, I was like looking at you like, isn't he supposed to be in some hospital somewhere?
He was worried for his safety. He's watching you.
He should be on a list somewhere. Some list somewhere the government should have with him on it. So, it is funny. Actually, Jay, I don't know if I've ever told you how Judah and I first met. Did I ever tell you that?
Did he pee too close to you in the bathroom?
Mm-hmm. And so I was told when I was going to college, they said the first people you meet in college are you're going to be your friends for your whole life. And I said,
oh, no.
All right. So I said, I'm going to meet the hottest women I can find. Right? That was and the person standing in front of me in registration was Judah. And he was talking to me this whole time. And I was like, I don't want this guy talking to me. I'm trying to find all the hot ladies.
Find all the hot ladies.
And then, you know how we had to take an exam on our Bible knowledge before I got stupider because of my degree.
See, I'm just standing in line, and this guy's hilarious. So I'm like, man, this would be a good friend to have. And the whole time he's looking over my shoulder like, that girl's hot.
Speaking of hot, so a couple weeks before I went to Toccoa, I quit my job. And I was a sheet metal worker, a utility power press brake operator. They would give me a piece of sheet metal that had a bunch of notches and holes in it. And I would develop this program to fold the right angles on it. Well, if they needed something for the line right now, they would put these little hot stickers on it. Big black bold letters. They're only yay big and just neon orange. Well, I had a whole stack of those when I went to Toccoa. I was handing them out to girls.
It says hot on it?
There were stickers and they would wear them. I kid you not. I might have some somewhere still.
Oh man. Well, you know, my very first memory of you, Jay, is because I was in I don't even know what his name was. Short guy who was dating Rebecca throughout high school.
Mark, Mike, I don't know. Ben.
Andrew. Ben. Was it Ben? No. Anyways, he was crying his eyes out because some guy named Jay Nass stole his high school sweetheart. And I was like, it's okay. It's okay.
I had no clue. And I don't want to go down that road because it didn't work out.
Yeah. But it's just funny because my first impression of you was the ladies' man.
No. Joe was the ladies' man. People are like, hey, is Joe your roommate? I want to know.
What?
I've seen like a hot chick walk.
That's not even true. I dated nobody in college. I absolutely dated zero people in college.
I know. He once came to. He was working at Pizza Hut, and they're all like, "Who is that guy? So hot." I'm like, "That's my roommate." Oh my God, can I get his name, his number? I'm like, yeah, he won't. Because they're. But all the time I was being asked. It
was the worst thing. I remember my first roommate was Nate Goodwin.
Yeah, nice guy.
And we shared a dorm together.
Oh, he passed.
And yeah, unfortunately, he did pass this year.
Good guy.
And he said to me, he's like, look, I'm not concerned about dating. I'm just going to focus on the Lord. I said, screw that. I'm going to date. If I find a woman, I'm going to get dated, right? And I was trying to meet all kinds of women and stuff like that. And I was not doing well at all. And he had women coming up to him all the time. And in the end, that's how he ended up with Krista. Good one. So his wife of what, 20 years? I think they were married for 20 years. Yeah.
It was his it was a trick. Act disinterested.
Yeah.
And
All right.
yeah.
All right. Well, this is the segment. The last 10 minutes, we just strictly stories. Jay, do you have any stories that you can think of that you would like to share?
Well, since we're talking about just starting to go our first days at Toccoa and hotness and funny, for some reason we all find nudity funny. And so we do 2 circles and a triangle. That just gets us every time.
All right. Well, we got to preface.
It's not.
We both pressed it at the same time.
It's not going to be naughty.
Right.
And so I was at Toccoa a couple of weeks at, I guess, Brown House or whatever, Edgewood, and we're not going to name any names there, but there was a very peculiar roommate, and I had no idea about this guy. And he's like, "Hey Jay, you want to go lunch at the Eagle's Nest or whatever?" I'm like, "Sure." So we walked down there, and it was a very odd experience. I had no clue what I was getting into, but we were coming out, and this lady pulls us aside, and she's like, this older lady, and she's like, "Did you see that man?" And he's like, "No, what are you talking about?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." It's like, "This man, this morning I was walking my little dog, and over there by the falls, he was a naked man. He was totally naked." I'm like, "Totally naked?" For some reason, my brain couldn't understand what was going on. I'm like, I said, "Did he even have shoes on?" And she's like, no shoes at all." I'm like, "Why would he be walking?" Because it was the edge of the forest, as she was describing. Why is he walking around the edge of the forest with no shoes on? And we're just kind of listening to the story, and I'm coming to this really conservative Christian campus, and there are nudist people like walking around here. Anyways, the lady was like just over the top. That man. It just echoes in my head to this day. And so me and this guy were walking away, and we're walking back to Edgewood, and it's about a quarter mile, and he just bursts out laughing. And I'm like, "Oh, this guy's crazy." And he just keeps laughing and keeps laughing. I'm like, "What?" He goes, "It was me." He's like, "Yeah, sometimes I have to get naked to get one with nature and God." And I'm just like, "Oh, let's get back to the room fast." Get back to my car and drive away or something. I was just panicking the whole time. But anyway, that was my introduction to Go Balls.
When Jay and I were roommates, and Jay, he was my first roommate. Like the first apartment I ever got on my own is with Jay. So the first, because I was in the Navy. And then I got out and I lived with my parents, and then I moved to Toccoa and I was in the dorm. And then we went to Edgewood, which is technically still the dorm. And so Jay was the first roommate I had like in an apartment. And I used to love these little, they looked like ho-hos, these things, but they were strawberry and cream. Yeah, and they were swirl. And I wait till I get home, and I'd have like 2 of them in a glass of milk, and I just loved them. And one thing I never do, I don't like sharing snacks at all, ever. So, and Jay would sit there and he would go, "Man, they look good," and I'd be like, "Yep, they are good." He's like, "How many are in there? Like 6?" I was like, "Yeah, 6." I was like, "I'm not gonna get." He's hinting at he wants one. He's like, "Cause they look good. I like strawberries." He's like, "They are good." And I was like, I'm not sharing treats." If he wants some pasta, he can have some pasta. He ain't having any of my treats.
True story. Well,
what'd you say?
I ever steal any of your ho-hos?
No,
Never touched your food ever.
But
all right,
that's because he labeled everything.
What?
That's because he went through and labeled all my stuff, and he put Joseph. He wrote Joseph on everything of mine.
I did. I had a black marker, and I wrote it on stuff.
He would write it on, like, the toilet paper, Joseph. He would write, like, stuff that didn't need to be written on.
All right. So I have that. That reminds me of a story because I was roommates with Joseph as well, and so when we were married, Chan and I got married. Joseph he moved in with us about 2 years or a year later, and we moved into an apartment. And I remember this one day. My wife sat me down. She's like, "We need to have an intervention with Joseph." And I was like, "He's drinking too much alcohol?" And she's like, "No, he is getting really unhealthy." And this is back before Joseph's like super healthy guy right now, like muscle guy, healthy guy. This is back before those days.
Yeah, I was 190 some pounds, man. I was
so
pretty big.
she's like, "Judah, listen, he's eating ramen for supper with a side of like butter." I was like, "Honey, I don't think it's that bad. I don't think." But so I remember this one night I walk in, I'm coming back from work, and this is before we worked together, but I'm coming back from work and I'm like tired, and I come in. I'm like, "Hey man," he's like, "Hey." I'm like, "What you doing?" And I think you were smearing butter on Oreos. Or you were putting something on Oreos and like eating them by the sleeve. And I was like, "Dude." And I just had like a moment where it's like, you know what? He's a grown man. And I just went to my room.
Well,
wow.
When I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of treats in our house.
Yeah, I mean,
we like when my parents were grocery, because in the military they used to only get paid once a month. It would be on the first.
Make it last.
And you bought all your groceries the first of the month, and then you had to make it last. So any treat, cereals or anything like that, we would get it in the first of the month, and then by the end of the first week, it's gone. You know, and by treat cereals, we would have like Life cereal. Honey Nut Cheerios was our treat cereal. And I remember I used to love Life cereal. That was like my favorite. And I remember, and I think I told Judah this story.
Yeah.
I stayed at a friend's house and one night, and I woke up in the morning, and I got up before he did. And his mom was in the kitchen. She's like, "Oh, do you want some breakfast? I can make some eggs or something." And I was like, "No." She's like, "I got cereal." I was like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "I got some cornflakes, Life cereal." I said, Life. I'll take the Life. She's like, "Really?"
Wow.
I was like, "Yeah, it's my favorite. Trust me, I love it. It's like my favorite." And she's like, "Really? I've never heard any kid say they love Life." I was like, "No, seriously, it's my favorite because I like it. I loved milk, right? And so they fill up with milk, you know what I mean? And then they've got a little bit of sugar and some cinnamon on there. And I loved it. And I was like, I was like in heaven. I was just like, I was like, because it was like close to the end of the month and I'm having Life. Yeah, and then my friend comes out and she's like, "You want any cereal?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll take Cookie Crisp." And I was like, "What?" And she pours a bowl of cookies. I was like, cookies is an option? I didn't even know that existed. I didn't even know cookies was an option. I didn't know this. I felt so ripped off. I felt like I was like, what world am I living in? I didn't even know that this was reality.
My dad would pull similar tricks. Like he would be like, "Oh, Dad, we'd like that toy or something, like a commercial come on TV." And it was cereal would come on TV. You're like, "Oh, Dad, let's get that." He's like, "Oh, that's fake. That's just on TV." And then we find out in real life that it wasn't fake. It was like a thing. And we're like, "Oh."
Well, one last story before we head out. The one. So Judah hit the outro,
Hey,
but
wait, no,
he didn't end